we start on time. We don't.
And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta, you pint-sized antagonist. It is Friday, and this is our own personal Friday protest, the Climate Realism Show, episode number 110, Climate Facts, the Videos. I'm your host, Anthony Watts, Senior Fellow for Environment and Climate at the Heartland Institute. Joining me today, Dr. H. Sterling Burnett, who is Director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center at the Heartland Institute, and Linnea Lueken, Research Fellow for also the Robinson Center. Welcome, guys. Happy Friday.
Thank you very much.
Happy Friday to you and a good weekend looking ahead. We have sun here finally.
Yay. Yeah, I understand Texas got rained on a bit in the last few days.
We're not Houston, to be fair. Dallas wasn't Houston. But we probably in the last 2 weeks have gotten 3 or 4 inches of rain.
Yeah, isn't that in conflict with the permanent drought they declared a couple of years ago?
Yes, Texas is supposed to be in an eternal drought because of climate change.
Yeah, right. So how are you doing, Linnea? You got any chickens around there today?
Well, the chickens are a whole other story. I have 8 dozen eggs in my refrigerator right now. They are laying way too many, so. Giving them to the church or something. I don't know. It's gone a little bit bonkers over here.
Set up a little shack alongside the road and sit out there a couple of hours every day and sell.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules are on that. I don't know if I want the FDA coming down on me and trying to fine me or something.
Just hire a small child. They won't arrest her. Pay her.
In New York, they will.
Oh,
Didn't they in New York or Chicago recently? They some kid for having a lemonade stand.
Well, surely South Carolinians are more sensible than
hopefully.
Right? Less.
Hey, Linnea, just an FYI, your internet bandwidth is going down. You're freeze framing from time to time. If you got any applications open or something, you might shut those off. Anyway, on episode 110 of the Climate Realism Show today, we're going to highlight some new ammunition we're going to provide you in the climate war. Notably, our website, climateataglance.com, which is now updated with videos, and we have an app. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, the crazy climate news of the week. Some of the nuttiest, eye-rolling stuff you've ever seen. This one's got to be the tweet of the year so far. This is from Professor Bill McGuire, who's now a professor emeritus, but he posts this. If I am brutally honest, the only realistic way I see emissions falling as fast as they need to avoid catastrophic climate breakdown is the culling of the human population by a pandemic with a very high fidelity rate. Where have we seen this before?
Yeah.
Well, they all think
it's a real tweet, folks. This is not something we made up.
He said the quiet part that many are thinking or speaking to their peers and allies in the back rooms, not smoke filled, but vape filled back rooms. We don't have smokers anymore. He spoke the quiet part out loud, and we've known this for a long time. When Arne Nice, the philosopher, said the ideal human population is 200 million people, when others said about 1 billion, it's like, well, how do we get there from here? He's saying, look, people got to die. And by the way, he says, cull. Pandemics don't cull. Culling is an intentional human action, unless, of course, by the way, you're unleashing a pandemic, which, seems to be what he's implying would be a good thing.
That's crazy talk, Sterling.
Careful. YouTube might cut us off at any moment.
Well, that's what they're his words. He didn't say we can only hope a pandemic comes along. No, he says call.
Yeah.
That's an intentional act. And so
I think call and cult
dangerous.
Are just one letter away from each other.
And now he pulled this down, by the way. Can you imagine he got backlash?
Oh, heck yes. By the way, here's what the backlash. He deleted the tweet after he got backlash. And get this. This is what he puts up in his place. Right. I'm deleting the initial tweet now, not because I regret it, but because so many people out there have mistakenly or intentionally taken it the wrong way. Oh, gosh.
Their way is there to take it.
How you take that out of context or the implication of what it says, high human fatality call. Look, that speaks for itself. When people are too ignorant to know what they themselves have said and implied. I don't believe in banning people from Twitter and things, but look, he's advocating death and violence. And if anyone needs to go, it's people like that. Not debate, death.
Yep. That's and as we have wow, I cannot talk today. As we have said, it's a good thing I don't talk on a show or something for a living on Fridays. He's saying this out loud because every once in a while you get one of them who is unintelligent enough to say it out loud, compared to all these other guys who keep it to themselves, but kind of more sneakily imply it through phrases that are a little bit, harder to directly interpret that way. Although if you're someone who's even halfway decent at reading between the lines, you can usually sniff it out pretty quick. Especially at these WEF conferences. I mean, some of the stuff they say on stage at those conferences are very close to this and a little bit, just bonkers when you think about it to its logical end.
Yeah. So, by the way, this Bill McGuire, he's an emeritus professor of geophysical and climate hazards at the University of College in London. I don't know what a professor of climate hazards is, but anyway, but there was a lot of blowback. And then even after he deleted it, there was more blowback. And our friend Chris Marts, who writes some of the coolest tweets from time to time, says, no, nobody took it the wrong way. It was crystal clear. You believe that the best way to save the planet is to reduce the human population, but you don't want to volunteer to go first and lead by your own example because you think your existence is superior to everyone else. And to the folks reading this, academic institutions you send your children to for a higher education are infested with dangerous people with this mentality. They hate you. Well, Chris, you're spot on.
Yeah, he's not a professor emeritus, or he shouldn't be titled that. He should be Professor Ridiculous. It's if I was the institution, the London College, I would end our affiliation entirely with him. I'd say he's no longer allowed to call himself a professor emeritus. We wish no association with this misanthrope.
Yeah. It's crazy. Anyway, that's why he's top of the list for crazy climate news this week. Now, speaking of crazy, we've all heard about the dangers of methane, right? Oh no, methane's going to jump up out of the permafrost. It's going to, the cows and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. So get this, The Guardian puts up this thing. Herd of 170 bison could help store CO2 equivalent of 43,000 cars, researchers say. Not one mention of the word methane in this article. So I would assume that by extension that now cows are okay and we should start farming cows as carbon sinks. Is that the idea here? I mean, how ridiculous. They can't even get their messaging straight.
No,
in fact, sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay when the cows are ones that are not being used to feed people, supposedly. Although who knows? We raise bison for food in the United States all over the place, or like beefalo. So it's okay when it's not being used as like a human benefit, but it's only being used as an environmental benefit. And look, I have no problem. There used to be wild bison in Europe. It's probably fine to be slapping more wild bison into the mountains in Romania or whatever. But it's insulting. It's like a slap in the face, especially since probably at The Guardian, you can article was posted on and see 4 or 5 articles on the same page talking about how we need to stop eating cattle because their methane emissions are so abhorrent that, and so dangerous to the climate system that we have to quit consuming the product altogether. It's just super stupid. And I'm sure that
let me point out. Look, I'm a hunter. Bison are one of my favorite animals. There are bison in Europe. They have never completely disappeared. They're called wisnets. They're in Poland. They're enforced in Poland. They may be in a couple other places, and so they wouldn't be transplanting them from here. They'd just be relocating some from Poland. But they're ruminants, just like cattle. They digest like cattle. They emit like cattle. Now, there was recent research that showed that cattle weren't that bad for the planet. That got ignored. It got covered up. I thoroughly encourage more bison. Methane has a short lifespan in the atmosphere. I don't want too much of it emitted around me or an enclosed environment. But you're right. It's certainly correct that if buffalo are storing methane, then so are cattle on a much grander scale because there's many more cattle. And if cattle are emitting methane, then so are bison. You can't have it one way for the woolly, for the great shaggy, as the buffalo hunters used to call them, and another way for the more tame cattle. It's just, honestly, I don't know what the Guardian was thinking other than.
I don't think they were.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they were.
Similarly, I think it might have been The Guardian that I read this article a few months ago, and they're looking to kind of backbreed Spanish cattle and a few other types of European cattle back to the R oak.
Oh yeah, they've been doing that for years.
Yeah, and they're looking to reintroduce R oak to European forests. Well, as was written by, I believe, an Australian biologist a couple of years ago, he wrote a report talking about how it's absurd to be talking about livestock cattle when the amount of bovine ruminants that live in the wild far outnumber the number in captivity. And if you really were worried about the impact of animal produced methane, you'd be slaughtering wild herds of animals left and right. Old picture of the million bison skulls in the mound from the 1800s. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts to think, this is okay. We have these wild bovines. That's fine. Captive bovines, they're a climate disaster, which just goes to show that this isn't about the climate. This is the meat thing is not about the climate. They're just tying it in for convenience sake. The meat thing is because they don't want you to eat meat, either because they're vegans, which they probably aren't, the ones that push this for the most part, or because meat is associated, or more used to be associated with having some wealth, and it offends them that it's so available to so many people now.
Yeah. Well, it's also none of these people are able to ruminate a cogent argument.
No, but they do produce a lot of methane, however.
Yeah. All right. So the next crazy climate news of the week is this one. Drax over in the UK is going to build a wood power cargo ship. That's right. They're going to fill the hold of the ship with wood chips or pellets or whatever. I don't know. They're going to make this wood powered ship because somehow this is going to save the climate, the universe, or whatever. I don't know. But, is it just basically funneling money right into the boiler? I mean, it's nuts. And how do they think they're going to pull this off? I mean, like you can't really send a ship anywhere. I mean, maybe you've got a point A and a point B because you've got, wood chip plants at each end, but you can't like direct the ship to go to another port because you don't have any fuel.
Well, I don't know about that. We used to run pretty decent tankers on coal and stuff, and I think it's the same kind of concept. My concern with this is energy density. I would say we already have a thing that exists that's more energy dense and more efficient than wood chips that we discovered many hundreds of years ago, and that's called coal. And if you don't want coal, we have oil, we have bunker fuels, we have even natural gas that you could probably run something like that on. So
they probably have, almost all of them have lower emissions than burning wood. How do you get wood chips? Well, you burn the wood first. You compress it. Do we really want? I don't know if anyone's ever seen any historical documentaries on shipping, or even old movies about steamships, because that's what this is. You don't burn wood and produce energy directly. You have a boiler and it produces steam. They're dangerous. They explode. Fire on the high seas, not a good thing on ships. They're also going back to these big sails. Oh, we're going to have ships that are produced with solar sails. I believe we went through the age of sails and we came out of it because we wanted to get across the oceans faster. And
not weather dependent.
It's not well, yeah. We don't want to go back in technology, folks. I mean, if you really want to go back, there are some people, the Earth Firsters, that used to, their mantra used to be back to the Pleistocene. We could go back to stone tools and flint. We could do that. That would get the culling that this professor wanted. A lot of people would die. But nobody really wants to do that. I don't want ships that can get across the ocean in a few days to take months, and to catch fire at sea because they're now burning wood. It's just idiotic.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next topic. A lot of climate catastrophe and alarmism is about elitism. It's okay for us, but not for you, right? And this is the perfect example. The Washington Post suggests we have to have cold showers to prevent climate change because heating water gobbles energy, leading to higher utility bills and more planet-warming emissions. So we should all just be stinky hippies to save the planet, right? No comment?
Oh, well, I mean, there are reasons not climate related to take cold showers that I've heard arguments for. I'm not going to do it. I don't know how else I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah.
My wife's relatives in Venezuela, some of them have no choice but to take cold showers because the power keeps going off, or they don't have the ones in the country. They don't have hot water heaters unless they have a special generator. My wife bought one for her mother to pump water and to heat the water, but they often don't have hot water. So they take showers in cold water. You can do it. I've done it in Montana. It's not comfortable for me, and I choose not to. I'm not worried that we face a climate catastrophe, so I choose not to take cold showers.
Yeah, well, I've done it in Kansas in the middle of winter where they didn't have any hot water at the hotel. I mean, we just had a blizzard, and I can tell you, it is not fun. Not fun at all. But, there's probably going to be sanctions in the future for running your hot water in a shower for more than 5 minutes or something. You can, see it coming because all these authoritarian elites seem to think that it's okay for us, but not for you. Speaking of which, we've got this guy in the UK. We got a lot of nutty news out of the UK this day. Jail the deniers. British environmentalists demands criminal sanctions because you are guilty of wrong think.
Yeah,
right?
Thought crimes. That's what he wants is thought crimes. He has read his 1984 and he thinks it's great. He thinks Big Brother is the right thing. If you say things he doesn't like or he doesn't believe is true, then you should be silenced. And if the silencing takes locking you up, well, there you go. Speech is now a crime. Thought is now a crime. Well, I think he allowed that you were able to talk to your relatives and friends about it, just not publicly.
Yeah. So here's the gist of it in the article. Eric Worrell is the author of this, and he says, I watched the video of the interview. According to the environmentalist Jim Dale, climate skeptics would still be allowed to talk to family and friends, but nobody would kick in your door. But they'd face criminal sanctions if they pollute people by voicing their opinion in public. Wow. It's like we're going to have the climate Stasi out there, you know? Neighbors turning you in for speaking ill of the climate at your barbecue.
Well, and he says no one's going to kick in your door. Then how are you going to enforce the sanctions?
Yeah, they have to.
Sorry.
It's always at the point of a gun.
You have been accused of crime. Show up at the court on this date. I refuse. Well, someone's going to kick in the door then. That's what it comes down to. It's like you don't commit a crime and then the courts just say, well, go blithely on your way. We'll get around to it. Eventually, it comes down to enforcement for that crime.
Right.
I had a moment last year when they were talking about the climate emergency stuff, and some of the chatter about jailing skeptics was coming up in the United States a bit again, where I had to really seriously wonder, is this job worth being sent to jail over? And my decision was yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be here. So I say, come and take it, I guess. Go ahead.
Well, now let's be clear. There is one. There are senators and Congress critters that have said the same thing in the past, and there's one person running for president who said it in the past, though he's backing off some of that stuff. RFK at one time, I'm pretty sure, said that climate skeptics, climate denialists should be locked up.
Right. It's been an ongoing theme for over a decade. I've had all sorts of, suggested threats levied against me. One of my favorites is that I should be frog marched before a criminal trial at The Hague for all my climate crimes. Yes, this came from our good friends over at Skeptical Science, one of their discussion forums. What a bunch of losers. All right. Get this. Who could have seen this coming? Eco-friendly brake cables eaten by foxes after a switch to soy insulation. What the heck?
This is something that was happening with mice too. Because, mice will eat, to be fair, mice will eat non-soy insulation, but it definitely made it a lot worse when they switched it to an actual edible material.
Yeah, squirrels could do the same thing, believe me.
Yeah.
And the thing is, is the soy really better? I don't know. Did they do the greenhouse gas calculation? I've seen studies recently that show that plastics are less carbon intensive than the alternatives used. I'm not sure that a soy brake lining. Think about the lack of safety of that. I'm going on the street and my soy brake line has been chewed through by a fox, and now I'm barreling towards the pram that's crossing the street, being pushed across the street by a nanny or a mother. And of course, simultaneously, England probably has more foxes now because they banned fox hunting. So you've got the combination of more animals doing the chewing and more attractive stuff to chew on.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it just goes to show that a lot of environmentalism does not think through the whole process, and they just do things because they're emotionally motivated to do so, because, soy brake cables are going to help save the planet. All right. Our cartoon this week is from our good friend Josh over in the UK. He's not one of those crazy people about climate. And his cartoon this week is about the best ever movie. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Can we have that cartoon up here? Have we lost our producer? Has our producer gone AWOL? There we go. He's searching for it. He's got it.
There we go.
There it is. Climate, the best ever movie. Now, of course, Mr. Mann cried, and Al Gore is complaining that he's getting the thing getting more traction than his. It's alarmingly good. And if you haven't seen it yet, the movie itself is called Climate the Movie, and you can search for it on YouTube and find it. And it's really, really well done. It's got a lot of prominent people in the climate wars talking about why climate is not a crisis, why a lot of the facts, supposedly facts, are overblown or overhyped or a combination thereof. And it's really worth having a look at. I would, if you haven't seen it, I recommend taking the time to do so. It's free to watch. Climate the Movie. Check it out. Yeah, well, there you go. Jim says we showed Climate the Movie at Heartland Event Space on Wednesday. It was amazing and impressed a full house. I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all. Okay, let's get on to our main event. Our main topic, as mentioned earlier, we got some new ammunition for our side in the climate war. Our website, climateataglance.com, is now updated with videos, and we also have an app for your phone. We have both Apple and Android versions of the app available, and the app will automatically update and keep fresh with new stuff, including these new videos that are being produced. Now, Linnea has done a tremendous amount of work over the past few weeks writing scripts for these Climate at a Glance, one-pagers, as we call them. Now, I and Sterling and other people at the Heartland Institute have put these one-pagers together, and that's what Climate at a Glance is all about. Gives you a quick, easy to assess reference page that you can pull up and use. It's got references to peer-reviewed literature and other things, so that these are, well, I use a favorite word, unassailable. And so, but what that is that's for people that do deep thinking and deep research, people that really want to deal with facts. But a lot of folks just simply don't want to get into it that deep. They want to watch videos, and that's where Linnea comes in with her scripts and presentations. So, Linnea, what can you tell us about these videos, and how did it come about, and where are we going with it?
Sure. So for a long time, we've been thinking about trying to do some video series. I've been working for a while on my Energy at a Glance videos. They're on a little bit of a hiatus. We're trying to kind of dial in the best way to do that stuff. And what we were finding was that even though I really like to have kind of long, detailed videos with all of as much precision as I can give to things, and so I can give the argument as many angles as possible, we realized that we really don't need to do that. The goal is to encourage people to get curious about the subject and to go and look into it more, or to have, just the basic facts that you need in order to refute the kind of overarching or oversimplified narrative on a lot of these topics. So like, someone says 99% of scientists agree that climate change is, a serious threat to the world or whatever. 99% of scientists agree on climate change is usually what they'll say. And so we put out a 3-minute video explaining that, well, no, it might be half and it might be more than half of scientists who say that climate change is maybe mostly caused by humans, or it maybe is this, that, or the other thing. But it doesn't mean that all scientists agree that you need to give up eating meat and give up driving your car and all of this stuff, right? And also that science is not about consensus. Science is not about a show of hands. And so kind of making these brief, easily digested videos that will link to the source, the reference link in the description. So it'll take you to the Climate at a Glance website. And from there, you can dig into it with a little bit more detail if you want to, and follow up on the references for that page. And you'll get a much fuller picture of what's really going on.
I want to say, I think you were a little too hard on them, Anthony. I don't think it's that they don't want a deep dive. Look, you have to reach people where they get their media now. People, I think rightly, don't trust traditional media outlets increasingly. Relatively few compared to past generations watch nightly news, certainly broadcast news. And kids, this is what the research just shows. Where do they get their information? Well, they get it online.
They get it through YouTube or TikTok. And it's not always good information. You got to reach them where they get their information. And so we're providing, with the series of videos, we're providing them good information they can follow up on. It's true. We are linked. But the point is, we are reaching audiences where they are reached today. It's a new marketing outlet for our high quality research. You know, it's all sound research. It's not dumbed down at all. What it is they get their information here. We got to go to where they get their information.
Yeah. So we have one of the videos available right now. This one on coral reefs, which is one of our oldest Climate at a Glance entries. Linnea produced this video and starred in it. And so let's have a look at it. We're going to run it in its entirety for you to have a look at. Press play.
Hey everyone, this is Linnea Lueken from the Heartland Institute, here with another climate fact check. Today, I'm going to look at the claim that coral reefs, especially the Great Barrier Reef, are in trouble due to global warming. Think about the kind of regions that you associate with visiting coral reefs. Coral species thrive in warmer waters, and most can't live in cold water. Recent warming has actually allowed coral to expand their range poleward, while still thriving near the equator. Coral has existed continuously for the past 60 million years, surviving temperatures and carbon dioxide levels significantly higher than what is occurring today. That's not to say that harm can't come to different coral species regionally, but much of what's promoted in the media is misleading. What you see talked about in the news the most is something called coral bleaching, but that's not the same thing as coral death. Bleaching is when the algae that lives on the coral's surface, which is what gives the structure its colors, is expelled. The coral organism is still alive and can live bleached for a time until it's recolonized by new algae. Bleaching can occur in cooling water temperatures and warming water temperatures. Most corals do recover from it. While abrupt warming of surrounding ocean water, like in a marine heat wave, can and often does cause bleaching, the primary causes include poisoning from a chemical found in sunscreen, sudden influxes of silt and chemicals contained in runoff from coastal lands and agriculture, and cold temperatures, like what happened in 2010 off the Florida coast, which resulted in not just bleaching, but also one of the largest coral kills recorded in the area. Possibly the #1 poster child for the supposed impacts of climate change on coral reefs is Australia's Great Barrier Reef, whose demise has been greatly exaggerated in the media and even from organizations like NASA, like clockwork, almost every year. In reality, corals in the Great Barrier Reef are thriving. In 2021, scientists at the Australian Institute of Marine Science counted more corals in the Great Barrier Reef than had ever been recorded in the 36 years that scientists have been keeping records. In 2022, scientists counted even more corals, and in 2023, coral coverage tied the record set in 2022. Corals are amazing. They often bounce back from bleaching and apparent die-offs. One recent example is the Coral Castles Reef, which lies between Hawaii and Fiji. In 2003, scientists announced that it was totally dead and wrote it off as a lost cause that would take 100 years or more to recover. But when researchers revisited the site in 2015, they were stunned to find it thriving again. This happens all the time, though those stories don't make the news quite as often as dramatic bleaching does. That's all I have for this fact check. For the sources used as reference for this video, you can check out climateataglance.com, where you can also download a free copy of the book Climate at a Glance for Teachers and Students. If you prefer paper, you can purchase a hard copy on Amazon. We also have an app available called Climate at a Glance for Android and iPhone. Thanks for watching.
Very done. Very nicely done. Very nicely done. That's the best elevator speech on corals I've ever heard.
Well, I hope so. You wrote it, I think.
Complete with elevator music.
Yeah, well, I insisted on the music. Some people don't like it, and I have read some of the comments on these, and I'm taking into account the feedback. But in terms of the feedback on the style of filming it, that ship has sailed. There is going to be no changing of this. filmed 31 of these things already.
Yeah,
So that's
the music I would have put in the background probably wouldn't have that would have driven people away, as opposed to gone into their subconscious, not,
Yeah, well, the goal was to have something a little bit like nice for the background, because it was a little bit jarring actually with nothing in the background. So we wanted something that wasn't too distracting. Yeah, I'll tell the editing team that we're gonna put Sabaton in the background from now on, and we'll see if the complaints increase or decrease there. So we'll see.
All right. So we have another video to show you. This one's on consensus. Now, consensus is a big deal in the climate cult. They want to say that, 97% of scientists agree, but the thing is that 97% of scientists is only actually a handful when you go down to it. The number of people polled versus the number of people that they actually tagged to get that number was something on the order of like 76 or 77 scientists. But they're speaking for everybody, right? Anyway, but consensus is something that keeps getting pounded into us again and again and again. Consensus says, but there's been fantastic episodes in history when consensus has been completely overturned. And that's what we're going to talk about here in this next video. Let's roll it.
Hey everyone, this is Linnea Lueken from the Heartland Institute, here with another climate fact check. Today, I'm going to address the claim that there is a scientific consensus that climate change is caused primarily by humans and that it presents an existential threat to life on the planet. First, it's important to point out that science is conducted with facts and evidence, rather than a show of hands. Historically, we know that there have been widely held scientific beliefs about the natural world that were proven wrong. Evidence trumps a show of hands, and the scientific data continue to show that there is no climate crisis. But if we do want to talk about consensus, it's also clear that there is no scientific consensus that a climate crisis exists. Many climate activists and media outlets claim that 97% of climate scientists believe humans are causing catastrophic climate change that demands immediate action. In reality, polling of scientists shows no consensus of a climate crisis, let alone a 97% consensus. There has only been one scientific organization whose full membership has been polled on this issue, the American Meteorological Society. While 2/3 of their members, not 97%, believe that humans are the primary cause of modern warming, only about 30% said they are very worried about it. By contrast, 28% said they have little or no worry about climate change. The largest chunk, at 42%, said they're merely somewhat worried. In another recent survey, pollsters at Fairleigh Dickinson University surveyed 400 scientists in climate-related fields. 59% expect climate change to cause significant harm to the living conditions of people alive today. But the term significant harm is a much lower threshold than climate crisis, and 59% is far short of 97%. Thousands of scientists, including those working at NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, have questioned the theory that humans are causing a crisis. For example, 1,800 scientists prepared the World Climate Declaration, saying there is no climate emergency. Prior to that, more than 31,000 scientists signed the Oregon Petition, which similarly declared that there is no crisis. So, how do climate activists come up with the 97% claim? They point to surveys that ask the meaningless question of whether temperatures have risen lately. Scientists believing that temperatures have modestly risen in recent years is not the same as scientists believing that the sky is falling. That's all I have for this fact check. For the sources used as reference for this video, you can check out climateataglance.com, where you can also download a free copy of the book Climate at a Glance for teachers and students. If you prefer paper, you can purchase a hard copy on Amazon. We also have an app available called...
Yep, and that was also very well done, Linnea. Thank you. One of the things that, the consensus is being used to, like I said, pound people. Well, you're in the wrong because everybody else says, it's happening. I would like to go back to something that maybe some of you listening and watching today have not heard before. You remember back in the 60s, there used to be commercials that would show up on nighttime television about ulcer medications. Ulcers were apparently caused by stress. That's how the scientific community basically viewed it. Ulcers were caused by stress, and there was a whole bevy of solutions out there, not cures, but solutions. Solutions to pain, solutions to irritation, reflux, all that stuff. And so there was the whole medical industry was geared up selling these snake oils, so to speak, that treated the symptoms but did not cure the problem. And you'd have to go through stress management and all that sort of stuff to fix your problem associated with ulcers. Well, it turns out that ulcers weren't caused by stress at all. And there was an internist down in Australia who was working with a guy in the morgue for another project, and he started noticing something, that cadavers that were coming into the morgue that had ulcers also had an infection of something called a heliopyrobacteria, something like that, or the specific germ that was in the stomach. Heliobacter pylori, that's what it was. Anyway, and so they were finding this in the lining of the stomach's walls, and it was puzzling to them, because how are these bacteria surviving in the stomach? And the bacteria are not supposed to be able to survive in this highly acidic environment. Well, but they were. Nature always finds a way. And it turns out that they did some research. They published a paper. No one believed them. The medical community said, yeah, it's still, it's stress and stuff, right? So this guy decided, well, I'm going to prove you all wrong. And he drank a potion of these germs and infected himself and got ulcers. And then he cured himself with an antibiotic. And all of a sudden, the medical community and the consensus crumbled. So this is the same thing with climate science. Everyone says, the world is going to hell in a handbasket because of human-caused emissions. I say that in the future, we're probably going to see that consensus crumble too.
Let's talk about just a few times in the past where the consensus has been wrong. But as they'd have it be done today, viciously enforced. At one time, it was thought that the Earth was flat. That consensus was wrong. The belief was that the Earth, that the sun revolved around the Earth. The Earth was the center of the universe. That consensus was wrong. Galileo found to his dismay, when he disputed the flat Earth, that the flat Earth. The Catholic Church wasn't keen on his views and forced him to recant under penalty much more fierce than locking him up a couple of years. At one time, there was a consensus that most diseases were caused by an imbalance of humors in the body. And so you bled people to get the wrong bile out. The consensus is often wrong. Science is not driven by expert opinion or consensus. That's political. It's driven by experimentation, observation, testing. And if observation, data, testing show a theory to be wrong, question a theory, it's not the theory that we uphold, it's the evidence. And the theory's got to be modified. That's just the opposite way climate science works. When the theory and the data clash, they're supposed to be, under climate science, it's you believe the theory. Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or what we're telling you? That's what the experts want you to do, is believe what they're telling them, not what the data show.
So, Linnea, you've got other ones in the pipeline coming up. And what's the schedule for release on these?
It should be once a week. I believe on Mondays we're going to be releasing one. That's the plan right now. It might change. We're going to try and test. The YouTube algorithm really doesn't like these videos. It's kind of something of a miracle that the consensus one did as well as it did, as quickly as it did. And it did get shut down by YouTube, it seems, pretty quickly. I don't want to say it for certain, but it does appear that there was some tampering in the background after it started to take off. I think that the algorithm at first was promoting it generally to YouTube, and then they caught what it was that they were promoting, and they immediately shut it down. So it's a complicated game that you have to play when it comes to the algorithm, and we're going to have to be kind of sly as serpents on that one.
Yeah, I hear you. There's no honesty when it comes to climate. Whatever. So, you're muted, Sterling.
Oh, how the algorithm works is you're not blocked. I mean, you can find the video if you go to our YouTube page. They haven't banned it. What they've done is shadow banned it. So people watch it and then it doesn't recommend it. That's what's happening. It looks like is that initially people were viewing it. It was recommending it automatically. People were sharing it. It has made it harder to share and recommend this video. And in fact, the algorithm itself is not doing so anymore. That's how they cut off the flow of information. Is if they don't like it, the algorithm says, "Oh no, this you want to know about climate and consensus? Here are these videos over here, and yours just doesn't happen to be among the ones they recommend."
Right. Yeah, it's not quite book burning. It's just simply taking all the books they don't like and shoveling them in the back room at the library. Yeah. All righty. So I want to talk a little bit about the app. And we do have this app that you can get on your phone. And it's on the Climate at a Glance page. There are some scans that you can do. But basically, the app will update these videos every week as they're released. And so if you go to a particular page, the app will show up and show up the new video at the top of the page. And you'll be able to just play it right there in the frame or go full screen with it. So it's a complement to all of the different facts that we've assembled and references that we've assembled for each of the different categories that we have on Climate at a Glance. And we hope that this will empower people to be effective when they get into arguments online or interpersonal type discussions or whatever. I mean, the bottom line is that just about anywhere you look in the whole climate debate, and you look at what the claims are about what's going to happen or what's supposed to happen, they fall down and they don't happen. And the consensus keeps going forward saying, well, it's going to happen, but it never seems to. And they keep pushing those goalposts further and further into the future. So this gives you the ammunition to start refuting those sorts of things by going to climateataglance.com, downloading the app, and watching those videos. And by the way, those pages that we have at Climate at a Glance, you can print those out. Some people just like holding paper in their hands. So we have a PDF version for each of them.
I want to break in here. I'm going to break in here real quick. Dean has given us a beautiful 10 pounds and says, thanks again for the show. Thank you, Dean. Everyone that watches this, we're so thankful and so grateful that people are interested in what we have to say.
Yeah, it's, and I would say that we would do better on this show if YouTube didn't put us in the back room with the other banned books as well, but we are there, it seems. So one of the things I want to do next is to go to our question and answer period. We've got some questions, and Linnea, why don't you take that away?
Sure thing. Okay, so the first one we have today is from our regular viewer, Albert. He says, what do you think of David Dilley saying mature cooling will kick in by 2030? He was on Tom Nelson's channel.
Is that like opposed to immature cooling? What? I don't get this.
I'm not sure what he means by that, but just in general, what do you think about some scientists suggesting that cooling is going to start kicking in?
Well, I would say UHI is so prevalent and powerful throughout the world right now. It's going to be a hard thing to actually see happening because there's so much bias in the surface temperature record that, even if we see a cooling of the atmosphere due to natural causes, the cities are still going to remain relatively warm compared to what they were 100 years ago. And the cities and the urban stations tend to make up the UHI afflicted stations, and the microsite UHI afflicted station tend to make up the bulk of the surface network, almost 96% by my research. So it's going to be hard to see a downturn. Yeah, it might level off, get a little lower, but when you look at the whole length of the graph that they put up there, it probably won't get back to previous levels. That's my viewpoint.
And I'm just not familiar enough with Mr. Dilley's claim. You know, look, there's been a long time. There's some evidence, more than a little evidence, you look back at history, that we're overdue for the next ice age. And we recently produced a climate at a glance on solar impacts and the next ice age. And at least some people have suggested that the increase in CO2 may delay the next ice age if we reach the right solar conditions come into effect, but the increased CO2 will keep us out of the ice age, at least for a few thousand years. I don't know whether that's right, and I've got no idea concerning Mr. Dilley and what he claimed, that there's a mature cooling coming on. Just not familiar with the reason for the claim. What I am is very suspicious of anyone who makes a claim, in 5 years this happens, in 10 years that happens. I'm suspicious of that almost regardless of who's making that claim.
Yeah, and I mean, you should hope that there is not cooling. Cooling would be by and large detrimental, I think. We really don't want, so maybe cross your fingers that is not the case. Regardless of whether or not it would embarrass warming alarmists, it would actually not be a good thing long term. So okay, we have another super chat. This is from Jenny, and thank you once again. This is 10 pounds. That's a pound. That's for pounds, right? Yeah. I'm not always very good with my European currencies, but thank you very much, Jenny. And then also, thank you, Stephen. I know this one. This is 20 American dollars. He says, I have watched Anthony's visits studying the temperature gauges. I've also studied Roy Spencer's website. Why are land surface temperature gauges still relevant?
Well, if I had my way, they would mostly be removed because the climate record is corrupted as a result of these biases. But the National Weather Service, NOAA, and the National Centers for Atmospheric Information, NCEI, used to be NCDC, they hang on to these records. They're more interested in the continuity of the record than they are of the quality of the record. And this is evidenced by the fact that they ignore their own published rules on the placement of these stations. And we've got them dead to rights on this. 96% of them, the ones I studied in 2022, plus the ones in 2009, are corrupted. It's just that simple. They are not 100 feet away from influencing things such as concrete, asphalt, buildings, parking lots, heat vents, air conditioners, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're more interested in that continuity of record than they are of the quality. They want that continuity of record so that they can make their comparisons for their monthly climate reports and so forth. And as a result, you end up with this reporting of this hot mess of data. And if I had my way, we wouldn't be doing it that way anymore. We would, to use a word from earlier in the show, cull a bunch of stations that are biased and use only the ones that are unbiased, and use that going forward. Yes, we won't be able to say this temperature today was not a record or it was a record compared to something in 1960, but is that really relevant? I mean, that's more like trivia. High temperature records are little more than trivia and fodder for the press.
Well, I think, look, I'm concerned about the idea of culling stations. And I'll tell you why. The stations weren't created to talk about climate change in the first place. They were talking about weather, local weather. And when DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, where I'm at, or Love Field, the other airport, look, that's where the temperatures are recorded. They're biased. But you know what? Dallas itself is biased. When the weather guy comes on to tell me what the temperature was today in my area. I don't want the temperature from 60 miles outside of Dallas that doesn't reflect what I actually felt.
Well, you got a point.
I'm feeling the biased temperature. That's what the temperature was that day in my UHI area. And for those purposes, that's what we need. For weather, that's what we need. What we don't need is to be using temperature data from a day to make claims about climate, a 30-year period, and reflective of something larger than the conditions in a local area. It has nothing, the whole idea of global average temperature is made up. There's no average. It's not like a human being where you can say 98.6 is the average for most people. No, the earth is not a living being. There is no right temperature for it. Historically, it's been all over the map. And so that's a made up number. But the local temperature stations, you got to keep them online. I just think we're using them wrong when we're talking about climate change.
Yeah, it's the old weather is not climate argument, basically.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
next
if
question.
a downtown station is saying that's 110 degrees, but a country station is saying that it's 50 degrees, that's an extreme example, but we're going with it. The downtown temperature is 110 degrees. I mean, in that location at least, it is hotter downtown. So Sterling's right. I mean, it's measuring it's measuring something. It's just not useful for trying to frighten people about climate change. I'm sorry, I just whacked my desk.
Media thinks it's useful.
Yeah. Well, we've got another super chat. Wow, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Rocks and Oil. That's cool.
Yeah.
And he's
and I want to say the reason that we have these donations is because we don't get a dime from Big Oil, despite what you claim.
Right.
Not one dime.
Yeah. So thank you guys. You guys are much nicer to us than Big Oil is.
Yes.
All right. So we have a whole bunch of questions that have been coming in. Some good questions that have been spurred by our answers so far. We've got, when do you think the true change in climate will be unmistakable for everyone? By solar cycles, I think winter 2028 will be a historic wake up. Well, like we said earlier, I think that it's a little bit foolish to make these kinds of decisions or these kinds of predictions when it comes to changing over to a broad cooling trend.
Yeah,
what do you think,
I'm
Anthony?
not much for use of solar cycles, particularly sunspot cycles, to say that it's going to be warmer or cooler. My friend Willis Etchenbach, who publishes on whatsupwiththat.com on a regular basis, has been up and down and backwards and forwards through solar cycles and sunspots, and he just can't find a correlation. There are people that get involved in something we like to call cyclomania, which find patterns, but you can do that with just any kind of data. It doesn't matter. Point is I don't think sunspots have any real effect on temperature on the Earth. What really matters is the total solar irradiance. And what else matters even more, at least on Earth, is the amount of cloud cover. Dr. Rice Spencer has said that we just need a couple of % change in cloud cover year on year to account for some of the warming that we've seen. And of course, pollution. It used to be back around 1970 when the EPA was formed. You couldn't see across downtown Los Angeles. Now you see pretty pictures, or you can see the mountains off in the distance in Los Angeles. So we've cleaned up the atmosphere, and as a result, there's being less sunlight reflected into space. It hits the ground and it warms the air, or warms the ground, which warms the air. So there's all these factors.
I would say whether it's warming or cooling, regardless of what the future, near future, midterm, long-term future holds, what's critical for, from an existential perspective, because we're always told climate change is an existential threat. What history shows, if it shows anything at all, is that wealthier is healthier, that the wealthier society is, the better able it is to adapt to climate conditions, whatever they may be, whether they're warmer or cooler. And so what we should be doing is helping the world to become wealthier, to become more flexible, to be better able to adapt to conditions, so that if the cooling comes, we can respond rather than locking ourselves in to a program that's planning for long-term warming, and we've got to do something about long-term warming, then the cooling comes and we're not prepared and we're unable to adapt. Or alternatively, if we were ideally like back in the 70s, we got to plan for long-term cooling. So then we lock in, because you know what's not flexible at all? Government programs. So I advocate we help people become wealthier, and one way to do that is to increase access and the use of fossil fuels.
All right, more questions, Linnea.
Yep. Okay, so these are we have two questions that are both referring to the magnetic field and recent solar flares. This one is warning, partially sarcastic, from Energy Colonizer. I can tell because I have gotten to know this user through our chat, and so this is a joke, but I'm going to read it anyway. What headlines did Heartland follow about the aurora being caused by climate change? Did anyone blame HAARP or maybe something called the sun? So, yeah.
I wish people would stop harping on that.
Yeah, of course, people were trying to blame HAARP pretty early on. That's always funny. You'll always find those on Twitter and stuff. What headlines about climate change? I don't think I saw one where they tried to blame climate change. Yeah, I'm not.
If climate change caused the aurora, I would think that's one of those benefits that we always talk about.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I got to take some cool pictures.
It's good for food.
I want to say one thing about HAARP. One thing about HAARP: the amount of energy that radio transmitter up in Alaska releases in the megawatts range, which sounds huge, in the human experience, is not a grain of sand on a beach in the total energy budget of the Earth. It's nothing. HAARP cannot affect the climate or temperature of the Earth, period. End of story.
Okay, and then this one has to do with space weather a bit too. We probably should have an episode where we have someone on to talk about space weather. This one says there's a YouTube
I know a few
channel
space cadets I could invite.
There's a YouTube channel called Suspicious Observers, and they are panicking about the decrease in the Earth's magnetic field while the auroras are showing up in southern latitudes. What do we think? I think I'm not scared of. I mean, if space weather, if you were to get a bad enough solar flare, then yeah, it would be a problem. But there's not much that you can do about it. I mean, I don't really see the point in being frightened of that. Just like I'm not frightened if an asteroid is going to come out of nowhere and explode the planet. Raising your blood pressure about something like that just seems like a waste of time to me.
Well, I guess my question is, at it like the magnetic field flips every once in a while, every few thousands of years, and it does weaken before it flips. This is a natural thing that's happened before, and the Earth has survived, and I'm sure we'll do just fine. Yeah, we may have some intense solar flares that get through and produce some nasty effects as a result in our technology, but if we plan ahead, harden our technology, we won't have to worry about it.
Yeah, my question was, would that be similar to what we'd experience if there was a large EMP used, right? If a terrorist tried to use electromagnetic pulse. If it is, well, we know how we can respond to that. I'm not saying we're doing it. I wish we were. But if that's a similar thing, and I don't know the physics of that, whether they are almost the same thing. But if they are similar things, then we can harden, like Anthony said, harden our technologies so it doesn't have the huge impact that it would have otherwise.
But is it true that the pole reversal thing too, like it's not like the poles flip overnight or something? Like it's still on the amount of time that it takes as they're shifting is still over thousands and thousands of years. So it's hard for me to get worked up over stuff that occurs over geologic time frames. It's kind of like being worried that the sun one day is going to explode or supernova and run out of energy and die. It will. The sun will die someday. I'm not overly worried about it in terms of how it'll affect me or any of my reasonably countable progeny. I can't think of a case in which that would concern me all that much.
And even if it did, and we're going to affect you tomorrow or your reasonable progeny, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, that's something we really can't. I don't know how that's maybe why, we take up Elon Musk and we say, let's go to other planets because someday the sun is going to burn out.
Yeah, I would just, my advice, because I know that a lot of our viewers enjoy the Suspicious Observers channel and stuff, is take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. I'm sure they're very smart. I haven't watched them a whole lot, but when it comes to the kind of the alarmist tendency of it, take all alarmism cautiously. Guard your hearts against it a little bit. Don't be too worked up over that kind of stuff, because if it's making you anxious and scared in real life, then you should probably not visit the channel for a week and give yourself a cool down. And when you go outside and see that the sky isn't exploding, you'll feel better.
Yep. All right. Do we have any other questions that we should cover here, or you think we've
I think we're over time here.
Yeah, we're over time. Jim did give us a cute, easy question, which is, what's my favorite video, and has it been released yet? No, my video has not been released yet. I really like the hurricanes topic because it is incredibly easy to refute. The data is so readily available that it's not even funny. You can just look up the accumulated cyclone energy of the entire world over the course of the satellite record and see that there is absolutely no increase in tropical cyclones whatsoever. All of it is nonsense, and that's fun to smack down.
Okay. All right. Well, that pretty well wraps it up here for this edition of the Climate Realism Show, number 110. I want to thank everyone for participating. I want to thank Sterling and also Linnea for their participation and good ideas and comments. I want to thank our viewers for their comments. I want to thank our producers. We have in the background Nate Myers and Keely Dracala, who are filling in for the long-suffering Andy, who's taking a much-needed break right now. So we appreciate all of you. I want to say thanks and have a good weekend. I'm Anthony Watts, Senior Fellow for Environment and Climate, wishing you a great day and a fantastic next week. Bye-bye.